occasion, and the bridal party and a few of us were talking last night around a bonfire about Jonathan Cook's former life, if you will, before he crossed over to the light side. Now, you have to understand, I came to know Jonathan in a funny season of his life. I would say a dark period of his life. I met him, and what he was wearing, just to give you an idea, was he would wear nothing but black T-shirts, and occasionally a shade of gray, with a leather jacket and some form of dark pants, usually camo, and a dark boots. Now, on the flip side, you had Erica, who was full of life and joy and exuberance, and you couldn't contain her energy. And so 3 to 5 years ago, if you had asked me, would Erica Minahan ever marry Jonathan Cook? I would say, Jonathan Cook, you mean the dark guy? And I don't mean skin complexion. I mean the dark Jonathan Cook? I would have said, no, not happening. To my surprise, not too long ago, Jonathan came out to New York to visit from California, where he now resides. And in comes this guy wearing khaki pants, a button-down shirt with a sweater, with brown shoes, and I was completely shocked. And 2 thoughts went through my mind. I said, first of all, who is this guy? But secondly, I said, wow, Erica really did a good job here. So nonetheless, I having journeyed with them over the last several years, despite my initial impressions, I have no doubt that Erica and Jonathan are meant for each other, and this is a moment to be celebrated. And I'm excited to be seeing them through this next chapter of their lives called marriage. Now, marriage is not a foreign concept to any of us. In fact, the institution of marriage has existed throughout all of history. Now, in its existence, many portrayals and pictures have been formed around this idea of marriage. Some being healthy ones and some not so much. And in the midst of all these different images of marriage, I think the best picture of marriage that we have today, oddly enough, comes from the life of Jesus. Now, while Jesus wasn't married himself, he certainly knew a thing or two about love. For instance, listen to what Jesus says in John chapter 15. He says, "My command is this, love each other, as I have loved you. For greater love has no one than this, that he laid down his life for his friends." And you see, to me, when I hear that, that is the truest picture of perfect love, summed up in this one notion, this one idea, this one word, and that word being sacrifice. Sacrifice. The marriages that last are the marriages that sacrifice for each other. The marriages that last are the marriages where the husband loves his wife, even when he's had a long and draining day at work. And Jonathan, I know you've had a few of those the last several years. The marriages that last are the marriages where the wife loves the husband, even if he procrastinates on some pretty important issues and tasks. And Erica, I know that's been a point of friction for you leading up to this wedding day. And anyone that's planned a wedding knows what that's like. You see, the marriages that last are the marriages where each person can be accused of putting 110% into the marriage because they both love each other for who they are fully and completely. Similar to the way Ruth in the Bible said, "Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay." This kind of commitment and devotion was precisely how Jesus loved. And Jonathan and Erica, this is how you're to love one another. Jesus again says in Mark chapter 10, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." You see, in a marriage relationship, the capital I disappears and it becomes a we. In other words, that means that you can no longer live for just yourself. Your ultimate goal should never be to serve one's own interest. Rather, just as Christ ultimately came to serve us, so should you find ways to serve and honor one another. While we live in a culture that says, look out for number one, the marriages that last are the ones where the husband and wife go out of their ways to serve and honor one another. This incredible love of Christ is further described by Paul in Ephesians chapter 3, where he says, "And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the saints, to grasp how wide and how long, high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. And Jonathan and Erica, this is my prayer for the two of you, that you would so love each other in a way that surpasses even human knowledge, human understanding, and in doing so that you would be filled to the fullness of all that God has for the two of you. And I got to believe that God has so much in store for the two of you. And I can't personally wait to see how that unfolds and what that looks like. I want to encourage you today to continue loving each other the way God created you to. That Erica, you be exactly who God made you to be. The woman that is full of life, full of joy, and full of exuberance for Jonathan. And Jonathan, you be exactly who God created you to be. Not the dark and gloomy Jonathan, although God loves that part of you. Be fully who you are for Erica. And in doing so, that together you'll make the sacrifices needed to ensure that you are both giving your all to each other. That you will be continually placing the interests of the other person ahead of your own. And lastly, that your love for one another would run wide, would run long, and high and deep as you continue to experience the love of Christ in your lives together. This is my prayer for you today. So Jonathan and Erica, I'm going to ask you a series of questions in light of all of this, and I'm going to ask you to respond accordingly. I'll start with you, Jonathan. Jonathan, do you receive Erica as your wife and bind yourself to her in the covenant of marriage? Do you promise to love and honor her in true devotion, to rejoice with her in times of happiness and grieve with her in times of sorrow, and be faithful to her as long as you both shall live? Erica, do you receive Jonathan as your husband and bind yourself to him in the covenant of marriage? Do you promise to love and honor him in true devotion, to rejoice with him in times of happiness and grieve with him in times of sorrow, and be faithful to him as long as you both shall live? Erica and Jonathan have decided to write their own personal vows, and so at this time I'm going to ask Jonathan to share his vows with Erica.